you do things that make sense, and then all of a sudden something will just take root somehow. And like I say, there's a bit of luck sometimes to it. And then you figure you are at least have enough sense to say, okay, that thing worked. Let's just keep doing that, and just go for it.
Are you a scaling SaaS founder? Ready to make the leap from leading a team to leading an organization? Join us each week as we refill your think tank with actionable tips and strategies from great business minds you know and those who don't know yet. This is SaaS Fuel with your host, 5-time entrepreneur, SaaS founder, and globetrotting adventurer, Jeff Maines.
Welcome to a special Thanksgiving edition of the SaaS Fuel podcast, where navigating early stage growth sometimes means wearing 17 hats, answering support tickets at midnight, and calling it agile. I'm your host, Jeff Maines. I help B2B SaaS founders like you grow from traction to scale. Here, growth is more than just numbers. Today, it's about crafting a perfect turkey, primo sweet potatoes, and leaders who build a business out of cranberry sauce. Because, we live in epic, adventurous lives and watching football today. It's awesome. I'm really glad you're here and checking out the show. What is it that sets the most successful startups apart? It's not just product innovation, it's knowing who you're building for and why. In this episode, we're going to zoom in on the foundations of building AI native companies that thrive, not just because of what they build, but because of how they operate. The conversation centers around a key insight. Innovation is only meaningful when it's paired with focused execution and a deep understanding of customer needs. You'll hear why founders must live in the tension between data and emotion, tracking metrics while also tuning into what customers are feeling. This dual perspective allows for smarter decisions, sharper messaging, and products that truly resonate. We'll also explore how AI isn't just a product feature, it's a core operational advantage. From improving internal efficiency to identifying ideal customer profiles, AI can help startups stay lean, move fast, and serve better. But it only works when paired with discipline, targeted go to market strategies, clear customer segmentation, and a refusal to chase shiny objects. Anybody else have a problem with that? Chasing shiny objects is harder today than it's ever been. And maybe most importantly, even more important than shiny objects, this episode offers a refreshingly real take on growth. I mean, yes, scale matters, but not at the expense of service, sustainability, or client satisfaction, or maybe even your own satisfaction. If you're building a startup with big goals and limited resources, this episode is a roadmap to doing more with precision, not just ambition. Let's carve into it. Our founder on Tuesday was Monica Marquez. She shared how to lead through AI disruption without losing the human in the process. From rethinking work habits to building digital teammates, Monica unpacked how leaders can transform fear into fluency and help teams thrive in the era of intelligent work. And our expert guest last week was Thanos Diakakis. He revealed what slows product delivery down and how to fix it. He showed us why elite engineering teams aren't the fastest coders, but the clearest communicators, and how to revive momentum by focusing on tighter cycles, smaller backlogs, and developer happiness. If you missed either episode, hey, you probably have some downtime, travel time. Download a few and check those out. Really, really good stuff there. My guest today is Klee Kleber, co-founder and partner at Build Group. They're a private investment firm doing venture capital differently, backing founders with patient capital, long-term thinking, and hands-on operational help. Klee is no stranger to scale. He built a marketing engine at Rackspace, led product and brand at WP Engine, and drove early e-commerce at Dell. Now at Build Group, he is helping ambitious founders scale sustainably, not just speedily, fueling companies built to last, not just to flip. Whether you're a founder tired of playing the short VC game or an operator wondering what good growth actually looks like, this episode is a masterclass in staying focused, customer centric, and true to your mission. Welcome our Thanksgiving Day guest, Klee Kleber. Hey, Klee, welcome to SaaS Fuel.
Nice to be here. Thanks for having me, Jeff.
You've worked inside some of the most pivotal tech companies on the planet and now back SaaS founders at Build Group. But what is it that drew you to the long game model versus the traditional VC path?
Well, I think, I can answer this question a couple of ways. One is it's just more natural for me and my other co-founders. Like we like to build things and we believe in, building companies, building products for customers that are going to last a long time, that are going to change the way people do work, help improve people's lives. It sounds corny, but there is still some truth there, and it's a good motivator when the going gets tough to know that what you're trying to work on is going to be hopefully a permanent thing. I have friends that went into the sciences and they discover things, and things that are discovered never get undiscovered, which is kind of cool. In the
Yeah.
business world, you work on companies, sometimes they go out of business or they get acquired or whatever. So it's not quite as permanent as some of the more, call it human knowledge areas, but still we go for permanence. And then just from like a math standpoint, if you want to look at an investment you make in a company or in a new product or a new market or whatever it might be, and it's going to take more than 4 or 5 years to pay off. A typical VC, a typical investment model wouldn't allow for that because the payoff would exist outside the window of the target exit. We can go ahead and do that. If we say, hey, look, let's double down. There's this AI thing coming now, and we really want to own this one category of the market. And it might take more than 5 years to do, but the payoff is going to be huge when we get there, and it's 8 years from now or 10 years from now. We want to be able to do that. So the part of it is just the ability to go after opportunities that are bigger than a normal startup could handle.
I like that. So is that the core problem that you're solving, or are there other ones that you're solving in the venture landscape as well?
Well, I think so. Our original idea when we set up Build Group was that we wanted to not do things the typical venture way. And I'm not going to, look, there's plenty of smart people in the category, and many of them
Sure.
are friends of ours, friends of mine. But when you make 50 investments and you have a small team, you can't possibly do a lot of research per company, and you can't do a lot of support per company once they're up and running. What you're really doing is something called power law investing, which is just basically saying I'm going to make enough investments that there will be at least one winner. And there's various ways to do the math, but call it 50. You need to do 50 investments, and then that one winner, however big that winner is, will kind of like set the return of your fund. And most of the rest of the companies just don't matter. So it's kind of a luck model, if you will. And
Right.
and we just I would just say we reacted against it. Like we couldn't go into that kind of business, and so we make fewer investments. We're not fully a PE model, but there's some kind of ideas like that in there, which is we have thoughts about best practices. We have some playbooks. We call them building blocks that we use with companies to help them grow, mostly help them build the right products and grow efficiently. Some of it is also just like what software you use for accounting and other kind of back office functions too. But we take some elements of operational know-how and combine that with the opportunity for outsized returns by hitting into a new market. So if you think VC is more about hitting a home run and private equity is more about cost reductions, and we're kind of like trying to take the best elements of both. Yeah, I can't say this is going to be a new model of capitalism or anything like that, but we enjoy it. We like getting our hands dirty. We're natural, operators anyway, and so we get in with companies. To be honest, though, some of it is just the know-how, but a lot of it is really actually empathy. It's like working with the companies. They just appreciate the fact that we've been there before and can kind of empathize with their situation when they make a bad hire or, have whatever customer issues show up, so.
Without a doubt. And I really like that. You really kind of the advocation, for building a durable business, something that is going to outlast and outperform, not
Right.
just looking for a quick flip.
That's right. Yeah.
So, not just the valuable ones. What's the difference, and how does that show up in day-to-day decision making when you're really building for the long term?
Well, I'll give you one concrete example. I'm a marketer by trade. I've done everything from sort of product development to sales, kind of in that whole range. But my center is marketing, and even within that, it's demand generation and growth hacking, whatever you want to call it. GTM engineering now is kind of the next wave. And so you can grow inefficiently pretty easily. All right. So inefficiently for like the SaaS industry, it's usually some LTV to CAC kind of metric around 3, whatever the benchmark is. Well, first of all, I'd say LTV to CAC is like the last refuge of a marketing scoundrel, meaning it's got so many other metrics embedded into it. You can kind of make it look good no matter what you do just by making some assumptions about churn or whatever. And so, but it is actually a good metric because it looks at like long-term efficiency of growth, right? So you can, you can kind of do this in a sustainable way. We see a lot of companies that run worse LTV to CAC than that. They grow faster. And so, I mean, the role of startups is to do innovation. The role of big companies is to be operationally excellent. They do awful at innovation. So what they do is they just buy the winners of innovation. So you can make an argument that an innovative company should just grow like crazy, inefficiently. Someday there'll be a big strategic exit and they'll make it efficient. So I could believe that. That's an arguable position. But our thought is it's better to, rather than to grow inefficiently, hope for that exit. It's just to set it up where you can just grow efficiently forever. Even if the exit doesn't come, you're still happy. So at Dell, we were efficient. At Rackspace, we were efficient. Those are where I spent, call it 17 years of my career. And so we just didn't buy into the theory that you had to grow inefficiently and incinerate piles of cash to get growth. We had an idea that you could just grow by efficiently operating, efficiently executing. And it requires discipline at all points of the go-to-market chain to be able to do that. Probably the most important is just having high customer loyalty and maybe some referral behavior out of the customer base. So it's integrated in with product and market strategy and ICP and everything. But that's probably where we differ from a lot of folks, is we don't look at a payback period of 24 months and say that's okay. For us, the payback period's got to be well less than a year. The LTV to CAC's got to be above 3, whatever, and we just operate to that. And it's sort of like, what's the most growth you can get by doing that. So yeah, there's a number of levers you can pull in there to get that, but that's really I would say the core difference is that we do not want to grow inefficiently in the hopes that we'll get some great exit. But a VC that's made 50 investments would want all their companies to do that, because it increases the odds that one will succeed, but it also makes life hell on the other 49 companies. So we just don't see that as a good outcome. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense. And, just a couple of thoughts there. One is that, growth at all costs is not what it's cracked up to be. And even companies that are VC backed, and talking to a founder a couple of weeks ago, they're like, we're growing 120% year over year, and it's not enough. They want us to be, twice that.
Right.
And I mean, it's crazy. But in the rest of the world, it's like, that's fantastic growth.
Yeah.
And they're doing it efficiently. They're doing it profitably. And, but they want us to do more. So, at some point it becomes unhealthy. Mm-hmm. And so I think this building a healthy business.
Yeah. It's ultimately alignment of incentives. So what you've got is you've got investors who want to return in 5 years. Therefore, the LPs want to return in 5 years. The VCs got to get their return in 5 years on average. And so they want their companies to do that. But the companies may have a longer horizon. They may not have exactly figured out their value proposition, ICP kind of combo. They may not have it figured out enough, but the VCs kind of don't care about that. You're either going to be a home run or we just don't care about you. I'm overstating the case, of course, but
sure.
And so we have had to battle that inside some of our companies where we're not the only investor on the cap table, and there's been this kind of growth at all costs, and we're usually the more measured ones, which is not to say that we don't believe in high growth. I mean, if you grow, 40% a year for a long time, one of the wonders of the world is compounding. I mean, you get to be really big, right? So our belief is get to some kind of rule of 40, zone for sure. But we don't want to do that by burning. And even a few years ago, you probably remember that we used to have a metric called 3GP, 3 times growth plus profit. And that was a way of weighting the sort of scoring metric more towards growth for companies that were burning. Sure. Now we're back to just rule of 40, which is just add the two together. They're kind of equally weighted. So it's just interesting to see how things evolve. It's loose money policy is gone. Maybe I don't know. I'm not a macroeconomist. I can't really opine on that. But I think any company now in their right mind ought to be pretty let's just say disciplined with how they use their money. And it doesn't mean you can't lose money either. We're not saying that. We just say you can't do that long term. Can't do it for years.
Right. Nobody can do it long term. But some even public companies have somehow found a way to do that.
Yeah.
And grow into the billions while losing billions.
It can happen. But it's like like if you're a teenager and you want to find a good career, the MBA is not a good choice because there's not that many people that are going to play in the MBA. So it can happen. It can totally happen. And Amazon's a good example. I mean, Amazon doesn't burn, but they never make money because their view is that profits can be better reinvested in the opportunities we have as a business than distributed back out to our investors. So they just never make money. They go invest in AWS. They invest in whatever the next thing is. They're just investing in that. And so I actually admire their approach to the business.
Yeah. That's interesting to think of it that way, but that's a really good example,
Yeah.
just how they're taking that and reinvesting.
Yeah. And like a lot of big enterprises, I mean, Amazon an anomaly because it's a large enterprise that innovates. Most can't. So then they just need
Yeah.
to give the money back to the investors that, dividends, buy shares, whatever they want to do. But, it's, yeah. So,
So how does a company that size continue to innovate? Because they absolutely do, and it's kind of multiple companies inside one.
mhm.
But
Yeah.
they've definitely stayed innovative over time and built. I mean, just you said AWS, and that's by far one of the most profitable pieces of the
hmm
entire enterprise, most valuable for sure.
So I have operated in big companies, and I'll tell you that the only way to innovate is that you have to wall off the investment. So I watched both models over my career. So let's say you want to launch a new product. I don't know. Have you ever read the book Innovator's Dilemma?
Yes.
It's an oldie but goodie, right? And
Yeah.
so we were fans of that at Dell in the old days. And so let's say you want to launch a new product, and the new product is going to be cheaper than your current incumbent product, and it's not going to be as good either. So it's got worse profit and worse performance. But your argument is for the market, it's good enough, right? It's good enough
Right.
to do the job for most people. So you sit in the meeting and you say, "Hey, I have this idea for a new product. It's going to be worse and cheaper. Anybody up for that?" And everyone's like, "What, are you kidding me? Sit
Right.
down, you little boy." And so it just doesn't go anywhere as an idea inside the business because it doesn't compete on the metrics that matter to the core business, things like profit and revenue and customer satisfaction, that kind of thing. It is going to compete on something different, which is disruption. Disruption is really hard. So most big companies just can't do it. The only time I've seen it done successfully is when you wall it off. You have to actually just create a separate division.
Skunk
Um,
Works.
and Skunk Works, and they have
Yeah.
different metrics. Their metrics are things like how many accounts can you acquire, how many production use cases can you spin up, how many new features can you add. But profit and like revenue and that kind of thing aren't necessarily the game for the first few years. And so there's a disciplined approach to this that we have used called invent, deploy, optimize, offload. It comes from Jeffrey Moore, and it's just a way of sequestering different initiatives in the business and then measuring them according to different metrics. But you got to wall it off, otherwise it'll get consumed. It's like try to throw the worst, cheaper product into the regular sales force, and they will boycott it. They will absolutely not
Right.
sell it. That's and I could spend all day talking about invent, deploy, optimize, offload, but it's kind of like a framework we use. You might also look at 3 Horizons is another similar framework. I think McKinsey is the author of that. It basically says you've got Horizon 1, today's product. Horizon 2 is a future, generally customer expansion that's going to pay off in the next 2 or 3 years. And then Horizon 3 are investments that are farther out than that and are probably involve some kind of new technology. And it's a different way of, it's all accomplishing the same thing, which is run today's business to the traditional metrics, the P&L metrics that you would normally look at, run the future businesses against a different set of metrics with a different team that is not subject to the constraints of the sort of first, Horizon 1 kind of business. So,
Yeah. I think it's a really good way to look at it. And yeah, I love the idea of walling that off, having separate metrics because you really do. And protecting the innovation from being cannibalized by the existing or the status quo. But
yeah.
if you don't disrupt yourself, then somebody else is going to do that. And is that
Yeah.
what you're seeing a lot in the marketplace with some of the new companies that are innovating and then being bought out by the bigger ones?
Yeah, I think the best large companies do disrupt themselves. Sometimes it's like impossible. So if you look at HP was always really good at it in the old days of disrupting their current printer model with a new one that was, cheaper and a lot of times actually better, but certainly lower profit. IBM has never seemed to be able to do it. They've always wanted to go after like the SMB market, and they can never do it. They
Yeah.
are big iron kind of company. So I have another maxim, which is I think successful businesses figure out one thing and not more than one thing, right? So like, as long as that one thing runs, then they're successful. So Apple is, the master at like integrating across, all parts of a new product to create something that is magical in experience. Like that's their core. They don't launch that many products. When they do, they're really awesome. And so that model has worked for decades and seems like it's going to continue to work. And I think Apple is also unafraid to cannibalize themselves with, say smaller, cheaper computing devices that eat away at something like a notebook computer. So it's hard, but you have to frame your business such that you're willing to, kill your sacred cows and go on to the next thing. And Um, and a lot of times I think they actually are buying things that then become the germ of the new offer. Um, Amazon's different. Like Amazon is not necessarily killed off its first core business, which was, e-commerce.
Sure.
That's still awesome. And AWS is almost like just an ancillary thing. It didn't necessarily need to be under the Amazon umbrella,
Right.
or today it doesn't necessarily need to be. But they use the profits generated by those two businesses to then go fund new other things that they're working on. And, some work and some don't. But I don't know. I admire Amazon. I don't admire their culture necessarily, or leadership culture. I think has got some weaknesses, but from what I've heard. But man, they an economic, kind of powerhouse. So
Yeah, absolutely true. And when you talk about a company figuring out one thing, is that kind of along the same lines of Jim Collins and the hedgehog concept of
yeah,
where they're really just focused in on that and kind of ignore other things around them, the
yeah,
noise.
yeah. And I think sometimes I think it's just luck. So there's there's some strategy processes and all that, but I'll tell you a story from the early days of Dell. I think Michael would be okay with me saying this. I mean, he's worth $100 billion, so I don't think he cares what anybody says now.
Probably not.
But in the very beginning of Dell, they were basically taking PCs and supercharging them or something, putting extra RAM in them and that kind of thing. And then they were like, wait, we can probably just build these things, And so they had a customer that asked them, is like, hey, rather than supercharging these IBM PCs I just bought for $5,000 each, can you guys just make me one that's already supercharged? And they're like, yeah, what do you want in it? And they told them. And so they built it. The customer's like, great. They were happy with it. And they literally had like a room, with some tables where they built these things. And then they just sat around. They're like, well, should we build some more? Like, I don't know what we would build. So they just waited. And then eventually somebody else that they had done business with called them and said, hey, I heard you guys can just make a PC. Can you make one for us? They're like, oh yeah, sure. We can do that. So they made another one, but they never made any in advance because they just basically didn't know what to build. So they were like, nah, we don't know what to build. So let's not build anything until we know what to build. And then eventually that became build to order, like the core strategy of Dell. But it wasn't like
brilliant model.
They had this vision of we're going to do this build to order model and it's going to be a lower inventory and they didn't. That was not how it worked out. It was like they just didn't know what else to build, so they just waited around until they got the next order. So when you hear the story told that way, rather than like this flash of strategic brilliance, it was more just like we kind of just started doing it this way, and then it happened to work, and then let's call it a strategy, kind of thing. And so anyway, I love that story because it's like,
yes.
You kind of, you do things that make sense, and then all of a sudden something will just take root somehow. And like I say, there's a bit of luck sometimes to it. And then you figure you are at least have enough sense to say, okay, that thing worked. Let's just keep doing that,
right.
and just go for it. Right. And so a lot of business to me is treading water, being disciplined, not burning, testing ideas, measuring like crazy, until you find, I call it the live wire, and you hit that wire and the light lights up and you're like, okay, that's the thing. Could be a business model, could be a product offering, could be a customer target, problem you're solving, whatever. Some combination of those factors, typical strategy factors, and you light on it and you're like, okay, that's it. And then you just go exploit the living daylights out of it. And so the role of like early stage is to try to find that live wire. And then once someone finds it, grow like crazy. So when we talk about our investing model, we don't invest super early where people are still probing the wires trying to find it. That's not for us, because that's the power law investing, invest 50 times kind of thing. But once you start seeing that little glimmer, that's kind of when we want to come in, because our best use as people in the business world is to figure out how to maximize that opportunity. All right. So you've got the little glimmer, something's there, enough, product market fit or whatever you want to call it. And then how do you grow the daylights out of it? Again, keeping it efficient. And that's kind of like when we want to invest. So,
yeah. And that's the magic of execution. I think that's, what really differentiates great companies from those that kind of do okay or even do good is just relentless execution.
Totally.
What kind of patterns have you seen in founders who actually execute well versus those who just talk a good game or spend a lot of time planning and trying to figure it out before testing?
So one of our investors told us one time, you can break the world into two kinds of people: those who break the world into two kinds and those who don't. So at the risk of overusing that expression, I think there are people who just are so focused on effectiveness that it just it subsumes them. Okay. And so those are the founders we're looking for. What I mean by that is they're they're always in the numbers, frankly, trying to figure out what's working, what's selling. But they combine it with like I'll call it direct customer contact. You can call it sales, whatever you want to call it, but customer success, whatever. But they directly just stay engaged with customers to hear what the customer problems are. And so the kind of marriage of the customer need, which sometimes is frankly emotional and hard to measure, with demand signals that show up in your numbers. And it doesn't have to be only sales. It could be like product usage metrics. So you've only got 10 customers, but boy, they're using this one feature. And so looking for signal and then leaving that with, kind of the customer, call it softer, kind of power from the customer. What's the emotional power that your product has? And if you can kind of marry those two sides of your brain, you can figure it out. Where I see founders go wrong is they're like, I'm just not that into the numbers. It's like, well, I think that's might be a fatal flaw to be a founder, frankly. And so you got to actually live the numbers. You got to live. We had someone in one of our companies one time say they don't want to live in the spreadsheet. And it's like, well, okay, I'm sorry, but you're probably not going to make it, in that role. And so, so you got to kind of live in the spreadsheet. I probably over-rotate on this just as my own personality type, but you got to know what's going on. And then you got to have that customer contact. And so you fail when you do one or the other. You got to do both. And then I think sometimes people are just caught up in the story of their company and themselves. And they just keep telling the story and people like it and they just keep telling it, but they never actually get down to business, which is go build the thing that you're talking about, Yeah. So some people are just all sales all the time, and they're not enough execution. So, so I think, those are some, I would say, broad comments. I don't know if there's one you want me to, dig into, but we have not, it's really hard to figure out who's going to succeed, who's going to stay in the seat long-term in a company. And I think I'd probably add one extra piece in, which is founders who are self-aware can be really, really powerful. So if they're not a numbers person or they're not a customer contact person or whatever, they at least know enough to get other people around them that are like that. So I'll go back again to Michael Dell. I mean, in the early days, now he's a consummate. He can do every job, needed at that senior level. But in the early days, he was more of a technologist than he was like a sales guy. And so he hired in really charismatic sales leaders and they carried the ball for him, evangelizing Dell out into the world. So, now he can do it all, like I say, but like in the early days, he was much more of a technologist. And so he brought in people. He was really good. We had like an office of the CEO when I was at Dell, I had like 3 people in it. It was Michael and a couple others, depending on what we needed. We had quality problems. He brought in, Mort Topfer as like a quality expert and totally figured out all our quality problems. So Michael has huge self-awareness, really good on that front.
That's really key in understanding that and not having to control everything yourself. Yeah, understanding what your strengths are, and I love that. I've known founders that they're really good at sales or they're really good at technology. Spreadsheets wouldn't be their thing, but they have somebody that obsesses over that they're just locked in with, and they have conversations constantly. So they're not living in them, but somebody is, and they're really understanding what the cause and effect is of the technology, of the sales, of the marketing, and really it's that team effort and working together to figure out, if something is working, why? That's one of the big questions is, not just success and celebrating it, but figure out why.
And you brought up tech, which is one of my, and self-awareness for me. I never think enough about the technology. I've always been a marketing person, like, give me the widget, I'll go sell it. I don't think enough about the technology vision. So I'm glad you brought that up because I think that's equally as important as spreadsheets or customer contact. So yeah,
it's important to have that the other people to help balance out. So we're not all the same. And I think that happens in a lot of companies is we kind of attract people that are like us and we hire people that are like us because we like them. Right. We see ourselves in them.
Yeah. We like to hang out with them.
Yeah. So, but it's not necessarily the right choice for the business or for the future because we need those diverse perspectives. We need that diversity of skill and we need people that'll push back. And when marketing wants to go do something that's, a little out there and crazy, they go, we don't have any money or that didn't work. Or how about do it this way? Or just, that differentiating perspective to help steer us together and make those decisions better.
I'll tell a little story on that. So in business school, we had this competition. It was part of a class, but it was a game to bring out a portfolio of products at various different stages of maturity and sell them into a market. but it was like all on a computer, right? It was an iterative game, and there were like 10 teams in the class. Teams were randomly assigned. And our team, one of the guys' background was in dance. Okay, so I was at Wharton, fancy pants business school, and his background was dancing. And he had this incredible idea, and he was part of our team. He had this idea of, doubling down on one product. And so we did. And so there were like 10 rounds or 12 rounds, maybe a 13-week class. And in the first 3 or 4 rounds, we were behind. But then the market need or desire shifted to the product we had doubled down onto. So in the next 3 rounds, we basically went from like 6% share to like 90% share. So they just turned the game off. They're like, this has never happened. We've never seen this outcome, but no one else will ever catch this one team, which was us. And it was because of the guy with the dance background. So I'm like, all right, there's your diversity argument right there. Is like, the rest of us were all doing our, spreadsheets and calculators and trying to figure out how to maximize the next period. And he's like, no, let's go do this. And 5 periods from now, you're going to win. And, ironically, that's been my life's philosophy ever since, even though I didn't think about it until just now. So,
love that. What if a leadership book and a Netflix drama had a baby? That is The Captain's Keys, Storms, Emotional Wreckage, and a surprisingly practical leadership system that one CEO called the owner's manual and never got for 20 years of leadership. Here is the brutal truth. You're probably drowning in LinkedIn connections while starving for real relationships. I hear it all the time. Most leaders are exhausted from playing the lone hero, and it's killing both your results and your sanity. The Captain's Keys reveals a new leadership framework, the Stability Matrix, 4 specific relationships that prevent burnout while multiplying your impact. And this isn't just theory. It's a system that I've used to scale companies and taught over 1,000 executive leaders. So grab your copy today at thecaptainskeys.com, Amazon, or choose your own adventure, print, ebook, or audio. Stop drowning alone and build your stability matrix. And I think that's something a lot of founders are really hesitant to do. It's like, well, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I don't want to commit too hard to one side because what if that doesn't work? And just like you said, what I've seen time and time again is the people that just go all in, completely commit and get narrow. They get super small and focused and go all in on something. Yeah. Those are the ones that pay off. And you're like, wow, that's brilliant after the fact. Right. But looking at it from the other side of, we got to diversify.
Yeah. You can't diversify your way to success. You can only retain your wealth through diversification, but to succeed, to build wealth, to build a company, whatever, you got to go all in on something. Yeah. No, totally.
Very counterintuitive.
Yeah. I worked at Dell. I got lucky to work at Dell the years that I worked there. But for I was at Dell 10 years. I want to say my first 7 years, I just was 6 years maybe. I was all in on Dell. I had no diversification whatsoever. I just owned Dell stock. And then finally I had a wealth planning guy, or maybe it was the guy writing my will, was like, this is stupid. You need to diversify. So I finally did. And that was around 1999, right before the dot-com crash and everything else. So it turned out to be really good advice at the time. But if I had diversified starting from the beginning, I would not be anywhere near, kind of where I am now. So it's, I almost by happenstance or just sheer ineptitude, I ended up not diversifying and it worked out for me. Back to being lucky. So, that's good. I'm glad you made that observation. It is an investment philosophy. It's like, if you want to build wealth in one generation, you can't diversify. It's like kind of a maxim in the wealth management world.
It's true. When you're investing in companies, you look at it as, permanent capital, which I like that. How does that change how you support the founders day to day compared to traditional VC?
I think that, back to the exit timing. So we're not opposed to exiting a company, but it is driven by the management team. And so the idea there is that they define when, where, why, kind of they think they need to exit. And so we do that. And the kind of business construct for this is, if you take all future opportunities that company has and add them up and, discount them back into the present period, and you look at what somebody would pay for the company right now, if they would pay you more than what you see your DCF of all those opportunities looks like, then you should sell. That's the math construct. It's never that precise or anything, but that's the idea. And so, we've had companies where that's what's happened. When this company Fix, and sold to Rockwell. And Rockwell saw a lot more opportunity in fixed than we could see. And frankly, they bought the company at a really good price for us, and they've totally exploited it and gotten really, had a really good outcome. Same thing. There's a company now called SoundHound that bought a company we had an investment in, Amelia. Same kind of thing. Amelia was basically an AI voice, kind of call center software, but using, language models. And SoundHound purchased it, and we don't really know what's going on there. We sold it, so we don't have any information rights. But just based on what I've seen in the publicly available information, like SoundHound itself is doing really well. They just announced kind of a partnership with or a customer with Red Lobster, like all their online ordering and phone ordering is done with SoundHound. And I think the Amelia product inside of SoundHound is doing better than we could have done with it, just because it's in a bigger operation and they've got a better kind of go-to-market machine. And those were driven by those teams, not so much by us. So that's really, I'll call that step one. And then step two is for our investors, many of them are family offices, and we did not get money from institutions who wanted that 5-year cycle. We raised money from family offices.
Smart.
And the family offices don't want taxable events. They just want growth, appreciation. So, So for them, us recycling is good because then we're not distributing money back to them that they need to pay taxes on. So we got alignment, back to the alignment comment from earlier, alignment across our LPs, ourselves, and our companies. And so if you can have all of them lined up on the same kind of time horizon is actually pretty powerful, I think.
Oh, that's very cool. Once capital is deployed, it seems like a lot of founders, they rush to spend once they close a round. Like, woo, we got to go deploy it all. And the VC model is that it's, go deploy it all and growth at all costs and be super fast. What advice do you have about deploying capital responsibly, especially when the pressure to grow kicks in?
We're doing this right now in one of our companies. We just kind of raised an internal round. And so that relieves some pressure that they had on, like headroom on their cash. But the same LTV, we didn't change the LTV to CAC target, right? So nothing can change there. So what we found is that I'll call it like pace of efficient innovation. So on the go-to-market front, how fast can you grow at roughly similar efficiency? So some of that is, simple things like in Google ads, how fast can you add new, ads in and have it be efficient? So, adjacent terms and new audiences and whatnot. And same thing with Facebook. And so it seems like for us, when I did this at Rackspace, I did the same analysis. I could do about 5% a month, which gave me 60+% growth a year, which for a company of Rackspace's size was great. So we were happy with that. This is a smaller company, obviously now, because it's inside the Bill Group portfolio. It seems like it's about 10% a month. Okay, so you can grow about 10% a month at decent efficiency. If you want to grow more than 10%, you're going to start really falling off the efficiency curve. So it's kind of like how fast can you learn? And it's you learning. It's how fast the AI tools that exist in the ad platforms can learn. It's how fast you can innovate with new marketing, whether it's some kind of content marketing initiative or something now with these AI tools that are out there, prospecting using AI. I don't know. We're trying all kinds of stuff. So the innovation machine, your go-to-market machine, is an innovation machine. I'll just submit. So it's constantly got to be trying to find new things. And bigger company, it seemed like it was about 5% a month. Smaller company, it seems like we're limited to about 10% a month right now. Now, maybe we can do better than that at some point. But if you think about it, 10% a month is more than 100% growth a year, much more. Yeah. And so start hitting different limits. So one is how fast can you get interest in your products? You could also put in how fast can you launch new products that would add on another chunk of market opportunity to your business. You're selling desktops, launch notebooks, you can sell more. You're selling product A, add on product B, you can sell more. So, that can sometimes give you step function improvements in growth. So those are all drivers. Then you have your inhibitor, and the main inhibitor to growth is just how fast you can get people up to speed. So let's say you've got, let's say you have 100 people in your company and you want to double the size, and maybe you can get some efficiency. Maybe you grow to 180 or whatever, but and get a little bit of per head count efficiency improvement through scale. But look at that 180 people a year from now. Well, how many of them are new in their job? Well, at least 80 because they're new hires, right? Then you probably also have 20%, attrition or whatever. So now you got 100 that are new hires. Then you have another 20 or 30 people that have moved to new jobs inside the company, probably because it's high growth. People are, getting battlefield promotions. So in that 180, probably 130 are like, don't have any idea what they're doing. And only 50 know what they're doing. They're still in the same job. So there's like this human limit to growth. And I have found for large companies, 60 or 70% is about all you can grow before people have no idea what they're doing on average. So, and when you get to that point, stuff starts breaking. It's like,
It's true.
like customer care doesn't work, and you're dropping the ball here and there and whatever. And it's just human knowledge. Now, maybe AI training and coaching and some of the tools that you see on that front can scale people faster or substitute for work that people are doing. So maybe we can break that kind of human limit, if you will, on growth. But in my experience, it's like 50 to 100% growth is about all you can handle without breaking stuff. And I'll put one caveat out there. There are business models. Like, let's say you have a search engine and it doesn't really require people. It's, eminently scalable. Okay, then you can grow faster because all you're doing is adding compute capacity or something. Okay, fine. But most businesses that sell complex product offerings, like B2B businesses, are probably limited to that, like 50 to 100% before it just breaks from a human standpoint. So it's managing all those forces. Yeah, that's the fun of it, right? It's kind of an art in the end. I mean, you like to say it's a science, you try to apply science, but it's really kind of an art. So
yeah, it's definitely a combination of those two.
Yeah.
For sure.
At Rackspace, we ran into, so our differentiation there was that we had the best support in the industry, by far. We called it fanatical support. But at that company, we couldn't provide that level of support if we grew any faster than like 70%.
Okay.
Because to be great at support, you have to actually know what you're doing. Back to that concept. And so we grew too fast for a couple of years, and the support model broke, and our customers got really mad at us. And so we just said, okay, fine. Then we called it focused growth. We're not going to grow any faster than this. We're going to make sure whatever growth we have, we maintain our differentiation or service level. So again, and you look at like the pressure from a VC that says grow more than, what did you say, 140% or whatever the company was growing?
Yeah, 120,
120. And they said grow more. And it's like, well, when you grow more than 120, I mean, all kinds of stuff's going to break. Your LTV to CAC is going to be bad, but also everything else is going to be bad too. Customers are going to be mad at you. So I just think the obsession with growth is an obsession with return, but I don't know. I think it has to be managed against reality and doing the right thing. So
that's really, really good. Well, I think you've seen founders overcomplicate go-to-market. What are the best performing SaaS companies actually understand about their customers that other ones miss?
Well, so there's a best practice in conversion rate optimization, which is that you start at the bottom of the funnel. So I say that's not just a way to, kind of do, some kind of marketing tactic optimization. That's a great strategy. And so the number one thing is to understand today your ICP, in the past your target market, but really I would say the different words of customers who love you. All right. So understand those customers, really get close to them, and then you want to find more like them. Well, so if you really understand them, first of all, they're going to stick around. All right. They're going to be loyal. They're probably going to upgrade with you. So as you bring out new products, they'll go ahead and buy them. As they grow, they'll keep growing with you. They'll keep you as they get larger if they're a growth company. So you can get growth just out of that install base just by itself. But then even more important, if they love you, they're going to engage in promoter behavior. We're big fans of NPS. And so, so they'll engage in promoter behavior. They'll tell other people about you. And there is no ad better than a referral. Referrals are the best way to get new business, right? And so if you have, or if they move from one company to another, they bring you with them, right? So there's from that core of customers who love you, radiates out a bunch of great effects. Referrals drag business as they move to other companies. People see comments online, that, someone's having trouble with their vendor for product X online in some forum, and somebody else will chime in, hey, I use these guys, are great. So you get, even though it's not a referral from two people that know each other, it's a referral that's on kind of social media. And so just obsess over that core, like start with that. Don't bother advertising until you get that thing figured out. And so from there, then that understanding will inform everything you do higher up in the funnel. So first of all, what target are you going after? Well, the people that love you. What traits do they have? And a lot of people make the mistake of saying, well, I do best in industry X. It's a vertical argument. I'm best in healthcare or whatever it might be. And I think that's a bad way to segment. It's the easiest way to get data. Like if you want to get data on customers, you can find out how many employees they have, what industry they're in, blah, blah, blah. But that is not related necessarily to how they make decisions. You want to figure out, back to the live wire, what's their pain point? How do they make decisions? It might be some people are more favorable to outsourcing, or maybe in their industry, there's a huge regulatory burden. And so they've got to somehow find a way to overcome that. Or they're an industry that's growing like crazy. So they've all got growth problems. So you got to have a product that offers them some kind of solution to their growth problems. What you want to do is get into the problem they're facing in their head that keeps them up at night, that is like the stressor that causes pain. You find that in that core base, and then you find other people who have that same pain. It's really what you're trying to figure out. Aspirin, vitamin, whatever. It maybe it's something that's more in the vitamin category than the aspirin category, but you're just trying to find that nerve. Okay. And
Right.
so out of that core, you find the nerve. And then, like I say, that informs everything else. Who are you targeting? But it may not be like at Rackspace. I'll tell you what we figured out. We looked at our best customers who loved us the most, and we figured out that we called them burn victims. Probably not a great term, but it was very descriptive and it got people's
Yes.
attention. And what was a burn victim? Well, they made money off their website. All right, that was criteria 1, and the criteria 2 was they had a business threatening outage, meaning like their revenue engine, their website went away for a day or two or whatever.
Oh, wow.
And the CEO, CFO are breathing down the neck of the tech team, whoever's managing the hosting. And they're like, you got to get somebody that works. Whoever we're using now, we cannot risk our business because we have a crappy vendor, a crappy hosting vendor. Who's the best one? And you go online, you go on the forums, all our current customers are saying, hey, Rackspace is the best one. You're like, call it Rackspace, you say, hey man, I'm dying over here. And we would get calls like that. And we just say, fine, let's not bother with negotiating a contract. Here's some servers. Just move your stuff over just so you can get up and start collecting revenue. We'll work out the details later. And that we would do stuff like that. So customers finally would be like, yeah, whatever you want me to pay, you saved my ass. And so, it's like, I love you. And not only that, when the CFO comes in later and says, hey, Rackspace costs, 50% more than everybody else. Let's go use a different vendor. The tech guy is like, over my dead body, we're not getting rid of Rackspace. You can step out of the office right now. So we figured that out at Rackspace. I would say it was figured out before I got there. I just got to use that. And so, that was our marketing, was like, hey man, look, if you're a burn victim, at risk of being a burn victim, didn't use these terms, we can solve your problems, and we'll be the ones you want, by your side when something horrible goes wrong. And sometimes the thing that goes wrong is our fault. We have, some networking issue or whatever it might be. But a lot of times it's the customer's fault because they just did something wrong. They fat fingered something. They actually accidentally overwrote a file, whatever it was. We would set up like a live line, put some people in a conference room and just be with them 7/24 until it got resolved. We'd send pizza to them, whatever. And so it's like we were a part of their team. And we did that. And for that account, probably now we're not going to make money on that account for a couple of years, when you look at it. But the benefit and goodwill and the benefit in referral behavior and online, kind of rah for Rackspace was amazing. If we had an outage and people started complaining on Twitter, we had antibodies, customers who loved us so much, they would go onto Twitter and say, yeah, they had an outage, but man, they're great. Even recovering from their own outage, they're great. So just, stick with them. We didn't have to do that. That was not us out defending ourselves. It was like our the customers that loved us. So start with customer love and then just radiate it out from there. I'll do one more quick story. I know we're doing time, but I used to work at Segway. So I was there for like 3 years. And same kind of thing, which customers loved Segways? So probably the ones that loved us the most were people who had a disability. And so they had trouble getting around. We couldn't market to those because we were not a medical product. So we couldn't come out and say, hey, we're great for people with disabilities. So that was kind of a road that was closed off to me. But we did have also success with police and security. And it was not because the Segway was a great tool that would get them there faster, help them respond. They stood up taller than everybody. So in a street scene, they could see what was going on. Like all the rational benefits, they just didn't, they heard those and they were like, yeah, whatever. The reason police officers liked Segways was because it made them popular. So imagine you're a police officer, cool. You roll into a neighborhood in your car, everybody scatters. You walk into the neighborhood, everybody scatters. The only thing you can show up on that people don't scatter is a horse, but horses have a lot of maintenance. So Segway was like, accomplish the same thing. Roll up on a Segway at the time anyway, it was novel. And everybody would come running. They're like, oh my God, what is this? This is so cool. How come you get to ride this? And the police officer was not popular. When I was there, we had, I want to say at the beginning, I was there for 3 years. We had maybe 10 or 15 police departments using Segways. There are like 700 in the US that have more than 100 officers. So those are like our target, 700. And by the time I left, we had like 400 using them. And the reason was they all saw that opportunity of like, I have a hated function sometimes, at least for some people, don't like the police, and so now I can be cool and people can like me. And that was like, I just changed all the advertising to show a police officer standing on a Segway surrounded by a bunch of little kids. I mean, that was like the kind of message that we were sending, and that was the nerve. That was that raw nerve. That was that wire that lights up, whatever, and it worked great for that market. You know, we had other things we had to overcome with Segway, cost and some other issues, but boy, we figured that out finally, and it wasn't like an overnight thing. That took like a year to kind of have that like get beaten into our skull. But those are two good examples, from my past. And you have it when you can ask like 2 or 3 questions. If you can ask 2 or 3 questions about a prospect and know from the answer to those questions whether they're going to buy, then you have figured out what your like true ICP is. So back to your original question, what do people get wrong? They define the ICP as like an MBA exercise, and you need to define the ICP as like a human exercise. That's the core. If I had to give one chunk of advice, it would be that.
That is absolutely brilliant. And focusing on that outcome, because that's community function for the police departments has nothing to do with features. It's something that's completely out of that. You're not going to find it in a sales slick. Yeah, but that's that's the reason, the real reason to buy. Is they see that value, and what can they do for community outreach? How does it change the perception? How does it change that relationship?
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely invaluable.
Yeah. And, and I think the best brands know this. You think of consumer brands for products that aren't very differentiated for each other. They get really good at like the identification factor of a product with that person. But I've mostly just operated in the B2B world. But I'll tell you this, B2B may be more rational, but it's definitely not completely rational.
Right? Not at all. I think there's a lot we can learn from consumer marketers, because the buyers are people first, and maybe they are buying on behalf of a company, but they're still people. They still, all those needs are still the same.
Yeah. If you can make them successful and seem cool and innovative, I mean, these work. These are things that work. Yep. So
Well, in a world of AI, things are changing, and I think products are becoming less differentiated and kind of more same. Just like in consumer marketing, what moats are left for B2B, and how do we create those and defend those as technology companies? As it's really easy to vibe code something that looks just like something else and kind of seems the same.
So I think of so first of all, you see these on websites a lot where you've got, hey, here's my product and here's all my, what are those dots called? I can't remember. They have a name.
It used to be called a Harvey Ball chart.
Harvey Balls. That's it. Yeah, Harvey Balls. Yeah. Unfortunately named Harvey Balls. Yeah. And so, anyway, you see those all the time in the check marks or whatever. And, so that's, like you say, that stuff is going to be easy enough for everybody to just fill it up, right? Everybody can have their, coding help, AI helper sort of like neutralize any individual feature. So you think of, I think of innovation as 3 tiers, and I didn't come up with this. I can't remember where I learned it. There's like a tier of neutralizing, where all you're trying to do is check the box. You're trying to check that Harvey Ball chart. And so that I think is going to be easier in the future. Then there's a category of innovation, which you could call something like best practices. And that's usually in the realm of like, I'll call it customer satisfaction or quality or whatever, where you're trying to get to a level that the reduction of errors actually saves you money, right? A reduction of incidents saves you money. So you kind of run that as more like a P&L exercise. And those are, I think, going to become easier to do. Like, best practice for any knowledge. So a few weeks ago, I listened to Vino Kozla talk about like going to the doctor. Okay. And he had some neurological problem. He's in his 70s. So he's paying for the best, he's worth a lot of money. He's paying for the best doctor on the planet. Before he goes in and sees the doctor, he takes all the studies he got as a part of his like diagnosis process and just loads them into a version of ChatGPT he has. I think it's, or maybe it's DeepSeek, I can't remember, but one of the platforms has like an advanced version. He loads it in and it gives him like a 5-page write-up, diagnosis, treatment path. Then he meets with his doctor who gives him the exact same thing. And he's like, so for like $10, I got this like incredible diagnosis and treatment path from ChatGPT. And I got the same thing from the best doctor on the planet. Knowledge, the best knowledge on the planet is going to be effectively free. Now, if it's not already, but it's so competing on knowledge, competing on just plain features is everybody's going to be at the same level. Like if you're an employee and you think I've got all this knowledge in my head, and that's going to help me compete, it's not, because anybody can just look something up. Like 90+% of employees are probably using ChatGPT all day long in their jobs anyway. So I think it was an MIT study that said something like that recently. So everybody's using it. Everybody has access to the best knowledge on the planet. You can load in, whatever whatever your problem is, and it'll help you solve it. Now, there's some error rate, stuff issues there, and so you got to actually then you got to read it, make sure it's right, double check it, whatever.
Sure.
Okay, so there's still some work to be done, but knowledge itself is like getting to a marginal cost of zero. So then how do you differentiate? And back to the neutralize and best practice kind of levels, the next level of differentiation or of innovation is differentiation. And you can only do that in maybe one or two areas. And again, this dovetails back. I like ideas like how they all tie together. The idea that a company can only ever do one thing, and that one thing is usually what they differentiate on, right? So innovation where you differentiate, you're not trying to be 10% better on that. You're trying to be 10 times better. So you can take all the things that a product can do or a service can do for someone and take one area of that and make it 10 times better. That a GPT is probably not going to get you there. It's going to require leadership thinking, heavy duty innovation, lots and lots of testing, real life stuff, because it doesn't exist. That differentiation, we don't know yet about it. Like, it's a new area. So you can't run a GPT on it because there's nothing to learn on. It is a brand new thing. That's why I say it's like leadership innovation. And you got to get out there and you got to be so much better than anybody else. And so I actually think we'll get more sameness on the checklist stuff, and we'll get more, hopefully, if it works out, more differentiation on these spikes of differentiation. So you can think of like Rackspace for differentiation was service and support.
Right.
So we would do things that were uneconomic to maintain that leadership position on service and support. As for which SKUs of the Dell servers we carried in our data centers, we didn't really care. We just wanted to get the minimum list out as cheaply as possible and just check the box. All right. We just didn't care about that. And by being simple and low cost as low cost as possible in those areas, we freed up resources to go expand the differentiation in the customer service area where we were differentiated. So take your pick of any product category. Everybody should, I think, be pretty good at the base, and then you should have hopefully more choice of spiky differentiation elements. Here's the service one. This is performance in this area. This is ease of use over here, whatever. And so for any given product, you've got really good choices that are way differentiated on things that matter to you. And I don't know, maybe that's hopeful thinking, but I kind of feel like, it'll free us up from the mundane so we can do things that are new, innovative, and differentiated. That's my hope. Maybe overstating it, but it will also require people to go back to the human side, right? So what is the human need that you're solving? How can you do that even better? The checklists are mostly the rational side of the decision-making process. The human need is some other making you popular, whatever, saving you from, a certain disaster if your website goes down, that kind of thing. So, and, I don't know. I mean, if I look around at my customer experience and a lot of things I use these days, I can't say it's awesome.
Yes, that's true.
I mean, there's a lot of room for improvement. So, and take things like teaching and healthcare, where we don't have enough capacity to do a good job of that stuff now. I mean, just look at healthcare. I mean, if you've had to experience the healthcare system with anything severe, you'll know it's a mess. So, we can get 100 times better in the healthcare system, and I mean, there's enough headroom there to keep mankind busy for a while, if you ask me.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
So anyway. Good. Well, where can people learn more about you and about Build Group online?
Well, I think we've got a Build Group website, and then we have another new website, new effort that's underway right now. That's literally weeks old. It's called Topwater, and the idea. So the original idea for Build Group I talked about, where we hands-on investing in the SaaS, B2B SaaS kind of marketplace, and sort of more than a venture capital approach, not quite the PE approach. Okay, so that's Build Group V1. Topwater is like an offshoot where what we're trying to do is find companies that are at that glimmer of light of product market fit, kind of ICP sort of definition, and are looking to grow. This time around, however, we want to make the company AI native. And so the idea is rather than hiring a bunch of salespeople and a bunch of engineers and a bunch of customer success folks and running it the classic way, which is what we did in V1, there are enough agentic tools and other support tools that are out there to either replace humans or probably more likely in the near term, augment humans so that the rote work is being done by a tool, an LLM or whatever, and the differentiation work is being done by a human. So that same framework we just talked about, we want to try to use that in companies. So our goal is to, over the next year or two, invest in half a dozen companies like this that are probably B2B SaaS. I would say not dealing with a handful of large enterprise accounts, but more like dealing with kind of SMB or medium business accounts. Starting to get some product market fit, but don't really have a mature go-to-market operation yet. And we want to make significant investments in those companies and help the founders build the company as an AI-first, AI-native organization. So not necessarily AI is central to their product as much as AI is central to the operations of the company. So this is an experiment, but we think it's where the world's going to be. So we just want to get ahead of it. And as we build stacks and know-how on this, we'll expand it out. But right now, we're just looking for a handful of companies. Again, it's called Topwater. So we've got a small website up, and we're starting to. We've talked to a couple dozen companies already, and we're kind of just trying to find the first one or two that we can go make an investment, partner with the founders, and build an AI native organization. So
very cool.
So you heard it here first. But we're starting to get the word out about it a little bit. So yeah, check out Topwater.
Outstanding. We'll make sure to link both of those in the show notes.
Okay,
and
sounds
so
great.
people can go check that out. Build Group and Topwater. Oh, it's a fantastic concept. I love that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Good.
Well, Klee, it's been such a pleasure having you today. Thanks for being on SaaS Fuel.
Yeah, Jeff, thank you, man. I enjoyed talking to you. It's so much fun. I look forward to talking to you soon.
Thanks again, Klee, for coming on the show and sharing your journey and turkey with us. You can learn more about Klee and Build Group at buildgroup.com. As always, all links, highlights, resources, and full show notes are available at saasfuel.com. And be sure to check out our YouTube channel as well. It's at Champion Leadership. Lots and lots of resources over there for you. Thought leaders share, just like a Thanksgiving meal, right? Share this episode with a founder who's pitching VCs like it's Shark Tank meets karaoke night. I've known a few like that. How about you? Everyone who shares this week gets a pitch deck that plays entrance music and auto-translates business jargon into actual investor excitement. What if you could scale your startup to 10 million ARR with just 3 founders and 0 employees? Pretty cool, right? Next week, we're joined by Amos Bar-Joseph, CEO of Swan, a company building the first autonomous business using only AI agents. Very cool stuff. We'll unpack how they run sales, ops, and pipeline generation without a traditional team, and why this isn't the future of work. It's already here. They're doing it. And then after that, 1 week from today, we have Mark Osborne, B2B growth strategist, podcast host, and author of the B2B Growth Blueprint. Mark has helped dozens of SaaS companies double revenue through full funnel GTM systems. And he's breaking down the most common growth traps that most founders don't even know they're stuck in. Have a tremendous Thanksgiving. Hope you have a great time with friends and family. Safe travels. And I will see you next time. As always, enjoy the journey.
Thanks for listening to SaaS Fuel. Full show notes for each episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, quotes, and any resources mentioned, are available at saasfuel.com. Be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you're enjoying the content and getting value from these episodes, please leave us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/saasfuel. We'll be sure to read these out on future episodes.